This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Kia ora and welcome to Emergence News. In a world where there is an abundance of negative news, we make it our job to talk about another story of astonishing, positive developments that never seem to make the mainstream news. If you enjoy this program or parts of this program, you may like to visit the Share International magazine online. And look, guys, I've got the boys are in the studio here, John and Peter. That new
pulsating with positivity and information, Nigel.
That Share International website.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's not just an update; it's a new website, isn't it?
Yeah. It's my best friend, actually.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, it's my go-to place now.
I don't know what that says about me personally, but it's my best friend.
What about you, Peter? Have you checked it out yet?
Yes, I have, but only very briefly. I haven't sort of got into it. I've just been unfolding the March issue of Share International magazine.
Yeah, well, I think the Share International volunteers and the head office team for the magazine over is, I think it's in the Netherlands, isn't it, in Holland? They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's great.
So, as I was saying, if you enjoy this program, we do encourage you to check out the Share International website and also Share International magazine online. There's lots of excerpts and you can get a sort of a sense of what the magazine is all about. On this program, we cover news, events and stories that demonstrate Maitreya's priorities in action. On today's program, I'm joined by the two guys, Peter and John, and they're both Share International volunteers based here in Christchurch, New Zealand, Aotearoa. And they clearly see the old order breaking down and much of the groundwork being laid for a new civilization. The coming of Maitreya heralds the arrival of a new golden age on Earth. This transition from darkness to light will herald a time of great change. And Peter, that's really evident now, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yes. I mean, everything seems to be a crisis of breaking down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
polarity.
Yeah, we're just sort of waiting for the new to assert itself.
And John, the breaking down, we've talked about it before. We're talking about just about every area of human life, aren't we?
It's the game of whack-a-mole that you get in kind of arcades, you know, where you have a big soft hammer and the little bug sticks its head up and you whack it, and it sticks its head up again and you whack it, and it sticks its head up again and you whack it. That's what's happening in humanity at the moment. Crisis after crisis after crisis, no way to fix it. Sometimes there's a big soft hammer, sometimes there isn't, but everything that we call civilized life on this planet is gone awry.
Up for question.
Awry. It's gone awry. and going away. Yeah. And as Peter said, the new forms are coming through. They're in their infancy. They are slowly taking shape.
And for some answers, I suggest the ancient wisdom teachings is a good place to start. Those of us familiar with the Maitreya story are probably witnessing current world events with mixed feelings, John?
Yes, I've got lots of mixed feelings, Nigel, and I'm going to get into those shortly.
That question was too open-ended, wasn't it? So those of us familiar with the Maitreya story are probably feeling that the current world events are both positive and negative. We need to remind ourselves that we are living during a period of great change. And according to the Masters article in the March edition of Share International magazine, at last humanity is becoming aware of the choice before it. We will perish or act in the spirit of brotherhood. The light of the new time grows brighter by the hour. And do you still consider it a privilege to be alive at this time on Earth, Peter?
Oh, most definitely, yes. Mind you, I don't have the other side so vividly in my consciousness, shall we put that.
And if you ask me that question, Nigel,
I'm not going to. I'm not going there, John.
I'll tell you that old age is overrated. I'm not enjoying it.
It's not for socks, that's for sure.
It's not for socks.
Regular contributor to Share International magazine is a writer called Graham Peebles. I'm a bit of a fan of him, actually. I like his articles.
Fanboy.
He says a major change, a major shift in attitudes is needed, a change in consciousness allowing for the creative reinvention of civilization to take place. He says the transition into the new is happening apace, and those forces that obstruct change are holding on to the conditioning and the attachments of the old ways. Their resistance is fierce. In fact, I'd say it's brutal.
Rearguard action by the forces of materialism, bracket the forces of evil, and it is brutal, Nigel.
Yeah, yeah, we see it on the television every day, don't we? So, how will humanity move towards a new, simpler way of life and overcome the challenges? All right, so look, let's make a start. Let's have a look at what Peter's looking at today. What's on your radar there, Peter?
Yes, well, I'm just going to go back to when we first heard about Maitreya and whether we're still interested in the story. And I mean, I think we are, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So
when did you first hear about the story?
About 87, actually.
Oh, yeah.
It was virtually at Wanda's place. John and I used to go to meditation there. Many years ago now, John, isn't it?
Yes.
And the first time I went there was June 87. So although I was familiar with the esoteric Jalkul stuff as well, so I knew that he was coming, but that was the first direct reference to him actually being here.
So that's over 40 years ago now.
Well, 87 years, so well, it's about 35, I suppose, isn't it? But,
so how life is unfolding currently in the 2020s, here in 2023, is it what you had imagined back then?
Yeah, well, I suppose most of us imagined it would have already happened by now, to be quite honest, but it's certainly not worrying me time-wise. I notice, in meditation that time sort of disappears, and so you realise time is something of the third dimension, really. If you get into a deep meditation, time disappears rapidly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And John, for you, when you first heard the story, did it sort of answer a few questions for you?
Oh, look, it really did. And I think Benjamin Cream's story and the Maitreya story, so Benjamin Cream's interpretation of the Maitreya story really hooked me in. I like the way Benjamin Cream writes. He's a very pragmatic but humorous man, and Maitreya's message really touched my heart. So I got drawn in very quickly, and it appealed to me on quite an intellectual level. But if you're going to ask me, are things unfolding in 2023 as you imagined 40 years ago, I'm going to say no.
That doesn't surprise me. Now, what are you going to cover today, John?
I think if you're going to ask me, are things unfolding in 2023 as I imagined 40 years ago, my answer is going to be no. I thought Maitreya would have emerged by now. And I guess that I kind of slumped into a state of deep unhappiness regarding the death of Benjamin Cream. And it really knocked me, and it's taken me a while to kind of shake that off. But the things that attracted me to the Maitreya story, Maitreya in my heart clearly is a powerful influence on my life, and also the logic and intelligence of Benjamin Cream's story has kept me functioning.
Now, Benjamin Cream says in a number of his books, he says that we are not alone. Why is that knowledge for us, humanity, important right now, that we're not alone? Because we do need it. We do need a message of hope, don't we? I tell you what,
Nigel, you've hit it right on the nail. I think people believe on some deep egotistical level, and that's the game of the ego, that we believe we are alone. And it's a great sadness. It's a great loneliness, and it's a great isolating force. One of the things that's kept me connected to this story is on some level, I know I'm not alone, and that I know that Maitreya's in my life. And that keeps me glued in on some level when all else is slipping away and getting washed overboard.
And looking pretty gloomy.
and looking pretty gloomy.
As the last couple of programs, the current events, weather, people's lives here in this country have been turned upside down.
It's biblical. We've had massive locusts, we've had massive fires, and we've had massive flooding. And plus I work in the social services, so I'm right at the forefront occupationally as our civilization collapses, and it's an awful place to be.
Yeah, it's a tough gig.
Yeah, really tough gig, yeah.
Back with John and Peter here on Emergence News in just a moment. We're looking at the emergence of Maitreya, and what does that emergence mean for us here on planet Earth right now? Because he's a teacher that is not coming to Earth at a time where he is only talking to a select few. And technology dictates that anything that happens currently, it's on social media immediately, isn't it? So there's a whole different game for Maitreya compared to if we look back at the Buddha, we look back at Krishna, Muhammad, we look at all these great teachers over a long period of time. And this time, Maitreya has got the whole of humanity as an audience ready.
But there won't be interpretations. There won't be minor egos running with the story and making it their own, because the source will be available. Not only will Maitreya be available on the media, however you define media, but he's not going away. He's going to be around for 2,500 years. So Buddha's teachings, rock solid, got distorted. The teachings of Jesus, rock solid, got distorted. The teachings of Krishna and so on, the teachings of Muhammad, rock solid, got distorted.
But he's in for the long haul, isn't he?
Plus, he has the ability to communicate globally, where Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha did not. They could only speak to people they could get in front of. So it was very easy for their message to be distorted. And this is what's unique about Maitreya's emergence, is it won't be a distorted or interpreted message. It'll be the oracle, it'll be the source in front of us for 2,500 years.
Where you go, John?
Okay, so are things unfolding in 2023 as I imagine? No. I thought, like Peter, that Maitreya would have emerged by now. I got involved in 1988, Peter, so just after you probably. I've been involved in this story a long time, and I just expected Maitreya would be here. It was the death of Benjamin Creme before Maitreya's emergence that really rocked me, because on some level, some way I believed that BC would be alive, Benjamin Creme, would be alive or be kept alive until Maitreya emerged. And I deeply mourned Benjamin Creme's passing in an almost irrational way. It was as if it was the death of my faith. And one of the things that kept me plugging away is my understanding of the many predictions that Benjamin Creme talked about that are coming true. So are things as I imagine 40 years later? No, but what's kept me involved is the predictions. And the three that stand out for me are climate change, the voice of the people, and corruption. So Benjamin Creme started talking about climate change that I'm aware of back in 1986. And some years ago, and I can't find the article, Benjamin Creme predicted that we would get 10 feet of sea level rise in 20 years. Now, I suspect we're at least 15 years into that. It was possibly 8 years ago that I read it, so we're into that 20 years. At the time when he was saying 20 years, lots of other experts were saying 50 to 100 years. Well, my money is still riding on Benjamin Creme, because this whole process has sped up. And if there's one thing science is finding out, is the interconnectedness of planetary life, and how 1 degree over there makes a 4 degree splash over there, and so on and so on. So Benjamin Creme's prediction about 10 feet sea level rise in 20 years, written, say, 8 years ago, is starting to look really valid, right?
And it sounded so alarming back then, and yet who would have thought just a couple of weeks ago when you were talking about a managed retreat from Auckland is imminent.
City.
And about 3 days later there was an article on Stuff talking about the fact that West Auckland
Yeah.
There's no option for certain neighbourhoods. A managed retreat from their homes is essential.
Because that phenomenon of climate change is really ramped up. And I see articles now discussing managed retreat from parts of our cities in New Zealand. I can see that idea of managed retreat expanding to whole communities. We're losing some coastal towns in New Zealand already, all right? Globally, there's communities who have had to manage retreat. I think that concept will expand to cities and finally to the coastline. I'm beginning to think we'll have a managed retreat from the coastline. The coastline is slowly closing to us as a safe place to live. I think that's happening. The second thing that I picked up from Benjamin Creme is the voice of the people. He has this lovely discussion point around the voice of the people rising up, and we're seeing it every day on this planet. And he talks about it being embodied in the youth of the world. We've talked about this many times.
Absolutely.
The voice of the people is rising up, and the spokespeople are the youth, who are now globally taking governments to court for not looking after the planet well enough. There's demonstrations globally at the moment for justice and democracy. And the final thing that Benjamin Creme introduced me to was this concept of corruption. And, you know, I've lived in the Western world my whole life, and we've always talked about, corruption's over there, corruption's them, not us. We're civilised, we're intelligent, we're educated. Well, you know, corruption and greed and stupidity go hand in hand. The media's compliance in promoting global and cultural untruths have been a major issue that's been uncovered. We in the West have had this arrogance about corruption, and suddenly it's arriving on our doorstep. I did an article a couple of weeks ago about the fossil fuel industry, knowing back in 1977, that their product was a danger to planetary life, kept producing it, and then lied about it, and then denigrated and rubbished anybody that said another story. So an orchestrated litany of lies, to quote a former justice of the court in New Zealand. So the corruption is there. It's in all aspects of our life on this planet. And then when we talk about corruption, let's not even start with policies of imperialism and colonialism. We still don't discuss them in a healthy way. But an awful lot of the privilege that I sit on is formed out of that imperialistic
on those foundations
colonial model, which was literally rape and pillage and take whatever we want because we've got guns and ships and soldiers. And that's been a global phenomenon. I was reading recently the USA has over 750 military bases on this planet, right? And they're strategically placed around certain parts of the world that they don't like. So the inference is you either play with us, you're either against us, or you're either with us or you're against us. This constant threat of violence. It's imperialistic model alive and well. So it's not gone away. We've really dressed it up in a better kind of lavish PR.
Yeah, the biggest business on the planet. It's all pervading, isn't it?
It's all pervading, and so I think if I've survived with my sanity intact, almost, it's become around the logic and saneness and intelligence of Benjamin Creme's interpretation of human behaviour and human activity. And he's given me an understanding of humanity's relationship with competition and greed. And I'm sitting here today with a new definition of evil. It doesn't come with horns or a tail or a spiked spear. Evil is going to arrive in a suit with a briefcase and in a limousine. And that's what we're dealing with on planet Earth. And I thank Benjamin Creme for giving me those ideas.
Okay, this is good stuff, reflecting on when we first heard the Maitreya story and the emergence of Maitreya. It's imminent, of course, and what's unfolding now, 40, maybe 45 years later. And for you, Peter, I guess, why would people not want to choose oneness, outcomes for the highest common good?
Yes, well, I first heard about Maitreya in 87, as I've mentioned before, during a meditation, and we had some of the books there, the very early books of Benjamin Creme. It seemed very reasonable that he had come because he was predicted in the Alice Bailey teachings, which I was familiar with, and of course expected by Christian groups throughout the world. We have a wealth of information from Benjamin Creme about Maitreya being the same teacher awaited by all religions and in the heart of many without any religion as well. Yes, we did expect to see him before now, but gradually we see the problems of the world that prevent it happening. The corruption, where money can buy almost anyone, and organisations that were started on an ideal, good-sounding organisations being exploited because of their good name. So humanity has to do a clean-up, and Maitreya has said he will step forward after a share market crash when people are looking for answers. So the followers of Maitreya have had to make decisions on belief in Maitreya or not. Some of us will work as long as it's needed until the great Lord emerges in full view and beyond if needed. Personally, I have not been troubled by what seems like a long wait. Time seems to be an aspect of material life and non-existent in higher dimensions. And I have found in meditation, time almost disappears. The timing of Maitreya emergence has a lot to do with humanity's collective state of mind, but also other factors such as planetary alignments and cosmic cycles are involved, of which we know next to nothing. But we can see with half an eye the breakdown of civilization is happening around us. So another viewpoint is the time is right for the teacher and the masters of wisdom to come forth and offer us a solution to our problems. In the latest Share International, Roger Waters of Pink Floyd gets to address the Security Council of the United Nations. Last month, he condemned the war in Ukraine, both the Russians and those that bid by the provocation of it. Speaking for all humanity, he says, "We are the many who do not share in the profit of the war industries. We do not raise our daughters and sons for cannon fodder. The only course of action is immediate ceasefire. And no ifs and buts. Please change course today. Agree to a ceasefire today."
Well, it doesn't matter what you think of Roger Waters as a person. If you read the lyrics of his music, and you read that speech that he addressed to the UN, he's pretty switched on. Some of the music they did on Dark Side of the Moon was quite prophetic.
But I mean, that's amazing that he got the opportunity and came up with that.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Peter. I actually haven't heard that, and it sent shivers down my spine.
Yes, so he just says, I don't care what's caused it, stop.
Yeah.
Stop now.
And let's reset.
Yeah. But as we know, the Security Council of the United Nations is almost a non-functional entity, isn't it?
I think we did some research for a previous program where 5 of the 6 biggest weapon sellers on the planet, arms dealers on the planet, countries,
are on the Security Council.
Are on the Security Council.
So
the biggest industry on the planet's armaments, and the UN Security Council's in the business of armaments. It's corruption. It's madness.
It is.
It's so corrupt. It's so brazen.
Yeah, it's normalised.
It is.
All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Gosh, the time's whizzed by today, hasn't it? Yeah. And we'll look forward to being with you again on another edition of Emergence News when we investigate the emergence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.